Niugini Limited, now 100% PNG owned.
IPBC has cleared.
Telikom to have broader coverage with tower rollout. And PM says 2015 to define Papua New Guinea.
This is National EMTV News with Tokana Hasavi.
A very good evening to you and welcome to Thursday's news. As always, it's good to have your company. Well, it's official. Niugini Limited, the parent company of EMTV, the longest running free-to-air television station in the country and home of national EMTV news and local infotainment, is now 100% PNG owned. The official signing of the sale and purchase agreement took place this morning in Suva between Telikom PNG, a subsidiary of Independent Public Business Corporation, and Fiji Television Limited. Telikom PNG, through IPBC, now owns 100% of shares in Niugini Limited.
This morning in Suva, Fiji, as Chief Executive Officer of Telikom PNG, Michael Donnelly, signed the sale and purchase agreement for 100% ownership of New Guinea from Fiji Television Limited. The sale is subject to regulatory approval in Fiji and PNG and subject to an extraordinary general meeting of Fiji Television Limited to be held in March. Fijian Holdings Limited Group CEO Nozab Farid said both the buyer, Telikom PNG, and the seller in Fiji Television had agreed on the sale.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to share with you that Niugini Limited, which has been for last 8 years owned by Fiji Television Limited, and effectively today, that is 5th February 2015, has become a local company in Papua New Guinea. It's an honor and a pleasure to sell this company to Telikom PNG, which is a state-owned enterprise. Now, people of PNG can be really proud they own a flagship, a great company with the right capacity and capability. And I'm sure that company can go forward.
EMTV under Niugini Limited is Papua New Guinea's first and longest-running television network and a profitable subsidiary to Fiji TV, crossing a 25 million kina revenue mark last financial year for the first time ever in MNL's financial history. According to Telikom PNG CEO Michael Donnelly, the acquisition is good news for Papua New Guinea as EMTV continues to set a standard in locally produced programs.
We are a PNG-owned company, so building capability and building capacity within these companies is very much a part of our vision and mission as opposed to just running commercial businesses. There is a convergence in the marketplace, not just between fixed line business and mobile, but what consumers want to do on those devices. And clearly, being a Niugini Limited, being a strong content owner and builder, is very attractive to our telephony customers.
He added that as a telecommunication company acquiring a media company, the two can now benefit from each other's synergies. And despite the entry of competition in the television media market, with the provision of digital television signals, Telikom PNG plans to implement digital services through MNL's EMTV within the next 12 months, making EMTV the sole free-to-air broadcaster to use both digital and analog services. In Port Moresby this morning, Minister for Public Enterprises and State Investments, Ben Micah, said Niugini Limited's acquisition will now beef up and converge the communications and media broadcasting industry in PNG.
I can confirm that the acquisition of EMTV by Telikom PNG from Fiji TV has been concluded. As IPBC has cleared the sale to go through, and as you are now aware, Telikom and Fiji TV have now signed the sales and purchase contract for the sale of 100% of EMTV by Fiji TV to Telikom PNG.
He says the purchase is a strategic move and one in line with the current government's plans to provide a more cohesive and converged output of information covering all forms of media.
Telikom as a network provider, as a provider of application services, and now it's going into content by acquiring Datec as the ISP provider, acquiring EMTV as a media company, and through its existing ownership of FM 100, it's now fully integrated in the telecommunication industry, from network delivery services to ISP and also to media.
Minister Micah says with Papua New Guinea Limited's experience and industry knowledge and Telecom's network and coverage, the future looks exciting.
It's a great positive step for the country, and especially Telecom and IPVC, that the main television provider in the country is now in the hands of Papua New Guineans through Telecom and IPVC. This is great news for Papua New Guineans.
Neville Choi, National EMTV News.
Telikom PNG will soon have an even broader coverage with the rollout of 500 additional towers across the country. Minister for Public Enterprise and State Investments Ben Micah told EMTV today that this will be made possible through $300 million from the Exim Bank. The rollout will be effected through the contractor Huawei.
Mr. Micah said the Exim Bank funds of $300 million is now on drawdown, and through the contractor Huawei, 500 additional telecom towers will be put up across the country. Mr. Micah said these towers will complement Telecom's existing assets.
To ensure that their coverage, is extended, and competition is provided into the market, so that we can have better quality, both fixed line and mobile service provided to the telecommunication sector, and also that we have reliability and prices can also be reduced through much better competition between the state-owned telecommunication companies and private sector provider like Digicel.
Mr. Micah added that Dataco, another company owned by the state through IPBC, will in due course assume control of the backbone assets like the undersea cables, terrestrial networks, and the LNG fiber network.
All of that now will be transferred to Dataco, which will be the wholesale company of the state, and hopefully this will strengthen both Dataco as a wholesale business, B-Mobile and Telecom as retail businesses, to compete with the major private sector player in telecommunication, which is Digicel.
With the acquisition of Niugini Limited, Minister Micah said Telecom is now fully integrated in the telecommunication industry, from providing telephone network services, mobile phones, internet services, and now media. Delhi Bagu, National EMTV News.
Prime Minister Peter O'Neill says 2015 is the year of defining Papua New Guinea. He said 2015 is also the year where the government's core policies like free education, better healthcare, infrastructure development and stronger law and order will continue to take root in the country. Mr. O'Neill said it is also an important year as the country celebrates 40 years of independence and hosts the Pacific Games. He made these remarks at the Leadership Summit in Port Moresby this morning.
The Leadership Summit at the Gateway Hotel brought together ministers, heads of government departments, CEOs and managing directors of state-owned enterprises and agencies. Also, for the first time, partners from the private sector, Oil Search Managing Director Peter Botten, ExxonMobil's new Managing Director Andrew Barry, and a representative from the Asian Development Bank attended the summit. In his welcome address, Chief Secretary to Government Semana Supezurano said the Leadership Summit was an avenue for leaders to discuss government policies.
If we're going to account for all those responsibilities being handed down by the national government, we need to account for what we receive from the national government and what we do.
Prime Minister Peter O'Neill commended everyone for their efforts in the major infrastructure rollout program that is gradually transforming the country, particularly Port Moresby and Lae City. The government has spent close to 3 billion kina in the last 2 years. This year, a further 1.6 billion kina will be spent.
Constructions of classrooms, bridges, jetties, and rural airports all throughout the country, particularly in rural locations. We have been part of an expansion of our free education program that has placed more than 2 million children in schools.
More growth is expected in the districts, as districts will now access more money under new arrangement where funds will be given to district development authorities. All this comes at the back of falling oil prices in recent months. However, Mr. O'Neill assured the nation that PNG is protected from some of the effects due to the early sale of LNG at a better price and the forward LNG contracts at fixed formulas, which have become real bonus to the national purse.
Lower oil prices can benefit other businesses and government in our country through cheaper domestic energy prices, which will lead to lower cost of doing business in our country. But we will be affected by lower oil prices if the current trend continues.
The Prime Minister was also mindful of issues affecting the region. The West Papuan issue is one that he says PNG must lead discussions in a mature and engaging manner.
Brutality of our people appear daily on the social media, and yet we take no notice. We have the moral obligation to speak for those who are not allowed to talk.
He urged everyone to work together and achieve the government's objectives and maintain political stability. This, he says, is a core basis to attract more investors into the country. Bridget Komatap, National EMTV News.
Treasury Department Secretary Dari Vele announced today at the Leaders Summit that the state of PNG's economy looks stable. He said incoming proceeds from oil and gas exports is generating more revenue to boost the economy. More funding will be allocated to upgrade health, education and infrastructure development to provide tangible services to Papua New Guineans. MTV's Eric Harupa has more on this report.
Treasury Secretary Dari Vele says that the proceeds from oil and gas export or export returns have increased PNG's economy by 14 billion. Mr. Vele says that the only onus that will be affecting the economy is the declining oil prices.
Part of the great thing about having the likes of ExxonMobil and Oil Search as our partners is that they delivered the project well ahead of schedule, which allowed us to access those markets and those prices in which it was sellers' time. So they're good times for us. So we'll leverage off some of that. So some of the growth that we were going to achieve in 2015, we're able to achieve that a little bit earlier. And so for 2014, we're looking at between 8 and 9% growth.
However, with promising oil prices and LNG incoming export returns, PNG is expected to see major developments in the country. Developments underway include Lake Tidal Basin Project, reconstruction of the island's highway and the upcoming Pacific Games. Meanwhile, the government will continue to supply services in districts and provinces through Provincial Support Improvement Funds and the District Support Improvement Funds. The Prime Minister says that the government has spent close to 3 billion kina in the last 2 years, and this year they will be spending another 1.6 billion kina with an additional 180 million kina since 2014.
We have been part of a massive rollout of infrastructure around the nation, from Lake Tidal Basin, large projects like that, to the Kookaburra flyover here in Port Moresby, to many constructions of classrooms, bridges, jetties, and rural airports all throughout the country, particularly in rural locations.
While the economy of this country is depending heavily on oil and gas export returns, agriculture will sustain the economy of this country in the long run. Eric Aurma, National EMTV News.
U.S. Ambassador to Papua New Guinea, Walter North, says PNG is far from achieving its medium-term development plans. Speaking to students at the PNG University of Technology this morning, Ambassador North says corruption is one problem preventing growth and development in Papua New Guinea. He challenged students to be agents of change in fighting corruption in the country. MTV's Sylvester Gawe has more on this report from Leh.
Papua New Guinea is a country that is rich with minerals, petroleum and agriculture. Coffee, cocoa and oil palm play vital roles in generating export revenue to the government's coffer. But what that has been detrimental over the last decades has been the poor living standards of Papua New Guineans. Access to basic services and law and order continues to be an ongoing problem in many parts of the country.
I think it's very sad that Papua New Guinea, a country with so many great people and so many resources and wealth, is one of the only countries in the world that has not met any of the Millennium Development Goals.
In 2000, Papua New Guinea, as a member of the United Nations, agreed on the medium-term development goals to reduce poverty and improve access to basic services and economic stability. 10 years on and none of the medium-term goals have been achieved. Ambassador North says Papua New Guinea's corruption problem is the same like many other countries in the world. It needs good leaders to put an end to the problem.
We still have problems with corruption. We still have problems with exclusive, non-inclusive economic growth. And we've been working at it a lot longer than Papua New Guinea has. So I'm not suggesting it's going to be easy, but it needs your commitment, your engagement, your willingness to take risks and to say no.
The U.S. ambassador was accompanied by UN country representative Roy Trivedi, who also spoke highly on the UN's effort in fighting corruption in Papua New Guinea. He says money laundering has been another problem that has seen millions of kina, or people's money, being kept in banks overseas. Following the disbanding of the task force sweep by the government last year, the country now relies on the Independent Committee Against Corruption to fight corruption in Papua New Guinea. Sylvester Gawi, National EMTV News, Leh.
Well, National EMTV News continues after the break. Another public servant charged with misappropriation. Also, police announced the disbanding of the reserve unit, and Governor Parkup says the buai ban remains. Stay with us for the details. Thanks for your company and welcome back to the news. Acting Provincial Administrator of Western Province, Dr. Modoa Gumoy, is out on 20,000 kina bail. Gumoy was arrested and charged for misappropriation late yesterday afternoon. He was held for an hour at the Baroka holding cell and released upon payment of his bill. Dr. Gumoy is the third person from the provincial administration to be charged on misappropriation. On Monday, the Western Province Governor, Ati Wabiro, was arrested and bailed on the same charge, while Norman May was the first to be charged. May was also released on a 10,000 kina bail. They were all charged for a 7 million kina fraud, monies belonging to the provincial government. Deputy Police Commissioner Operations Jim Andrews says the directive to decommission 2 reservist units will come into effect next week. Andrews said the directive is authorized by Police Commissioner Jeffrey Vaki and police should act upon it. This follows the recent killings at Hanuabada and assault on citizens that involved police reservists.
The directive from Commissioner Vaki came following the alleged police killing in Hanuabada last month. But sources from the police department said it was a pending decision the commissioner had announced in November last year. The directive is a result of killings, police brutality and assault cases that occurred since the reserve unit was created.
MOUs are straightforward and there should not be any deviation. When there are deviations, then Commissioner has the authority to question, and he can withdraw anytime.
Andrews explained that all reservists were stood down in 2004 following the 61 recommendation from the national government. He said a recent memorandum of understanding was signed between the National Capital District and the Constabulary to establish a reserve unit purposely to police the betelnut ban. However, much of the duties carried out by this unit were not in compliance with the Police Act.
Police is only to enforce laws of the country, not the bylaws of the city council, no, or any other council.
Andrews said despite the police units working for other organizations, the constabulary is responsible for recruiting and training of all reservists. He stressed that the betelnut ban should not be part of the police duty and that the city rangers are responsible in enforcing regulations surrounding the ban.
Police uniform is one when you actually carrying out police work under the command of a regular police officers, nobody else. a general manager of a commercial bank cannot give direction to a reserve police. No, that is illegal.
Despite the directive, senior police officers said according to the Police Act, they will only carry out this order when a proper police gazetted is issued to them. Tekla Gunga, National EMTV News.
On the contrary, the NCDC Police Reserve Unit will continue to enforce the nation's capital buai ban. NCD Governor Paus Parker made these remarks today when responding to Police Commissioner Jeffrey Vaki's order to dissolve the Reserve Unit. Governor Parker explained that the Reserve Unit operates under a signed Memorandum of Understanding between the NCD Commission and Constabulary. He said until and when that MOU is cancelled through an official process between both parties, the unit will continue to enforce the buai ban.
The unit is still functioning and will still operate as normal as before until such time we get a formal notice from the Commissioner. That's how government conducts business, and that's how I'm going to conduct business in respect of this particular matter, because we also have a MOA, a Memorandum of Understanding with the Police Commissioner as to how to maintain the reserve unit, and also it provides for how to disband it. It does not provide in that MOA that somebody unilaterally make addition or it's announced on the media that the unit should be disbanded.
Mr. Parker added the NCD Reserve Unit must not be blamed for the backlog of police brutality and assault cases, and most recently the Hanuabada killings.
There's one or two incidents that probably gave a bad image to the reserve police, our NCDC police. But we should not lose sight of the great achievement that they've done in helping us to police the buai ban and also deal with petty crimes, and we have been having to police the bus stops as well.
However, the police hierarchy today announced that the NCDC Police Reserve Unit will be disbanded next week through a police gazette. Many believe the decision was a result from the HB killings, but Governor Parker said an official report from the NCDC Reserve Unit at the time says they played no part in the incident.
They were there specifically at the request of the village people to clear the road of vendors because there were too many of them. They were encroaching on the road. When the shooting happens between 3 and 4, there's no reserve police of NCDC unit there. And I have a written statement from our reserve police that they never requested backup from regular police.
In the meantime, a coronial inquest set by the government's chief secretary, Sir Manasupe Zurino, is yet to establish the findings of the killings. With 148 days before the Pacific Games begin, heads of the 3 disciplinary forces continue to promote their joint cooperation to provide security during the Games. Deputy Police Commissioner Operations Jim Andrews said PNG Defence Force and Correctional Service will be assisting police with manpower.
Mr. Andrews is confident that at least 2,500 police officers will be deployed to Port Moresby to be involved in this operation. He said the PNGDF will send a platoon while Correctional Service will also send its officers. He confirmed that the constabulary has paid some of the necessary equipment needed for the Games.
We have already made our capital purchase, like vehicles and all these communication equipment and all that. We've already purchased, and now we are looking at this year. We're looking at organizing the deployment of personnel, the commanders on each venue.
Brigadier General Gilbert Toropo said yesterday that apart from assisting with manpower, the Army is working with its Australian counterparts through joint exercise to develop a proper security plan for the Games. But he emphasized the need for defense personnel to maintain a high level of discipline.
Where our people of this country, where our government can be proud of, and that we can play an impact and responsible discipline forces role in the region and make also an important player in our regional efforts.
This is one of the first and biggest joint operations that will see all 3 forces working together to achieve a common goal.
You would like to work and commit yourself to serve our government, our people and our country as correctional officers, serving in Papua New Guinea Correctional Service. or bow out and choose another career.
Today, the Chinese embassy presented 20 motorbikes to police that will assist transportation during the games. The operation will see officers from all three forces conducting traffic diversion, crowd control, and general security for both athletes and the public. Vastinata Yama, National EMTV News.
Lay's housing rental continues to increase, drawing concerns from city residents. Real estate prices are pushing most middle-income earning Papua New Guineans into settlements, and housing rental is expected to increase in the next 5 years. A Lay businessman, Pasangan Taru, who also owns properties in Port Moresby, says the market needs to be regulated.
Lay businessman Pasangan Taru built a company that rents properties and operates a guest house. Taru is one of few Papua New Guineans who have ventured into the real estate business and succeeded. He explains that the business is a way of life and that the market needs to be mutually regulated to suit all stakeholders, especially customers.
Because the price is just too much for them to raise that equity to buy a property. Secondly, they are in competition. The market is open and they're in competition with the big players. What are the chances? Nothing. Therefore, I strongly believe that the government should now regulate that industry.
His property, located at Lay's Boundary Road area, is amongst the most affordable in Lay's expensive housing rental market. Lay's real estate market is so expensive that finding homes with proper amenities is difficult.
Improve the facilities so it's good for the resident to live in, and the toilet, the shower.
But for the Taru's property, it's been a priority to maintain the highest possible standards and giving the best rates.
Government has to be a well-planned and well-monitored intervention so that one stakeholder is not too much negatively affected.
Sovereign Real Estate Managing Director Padi Tonga shares similar views with Pasangan Taru. Lay's housing rental has been at an all-time high in the last 12 months, but experts in the market see a shift soon. After the LNG project construction phase ended, they expect the prices to come down. But for the long term, the government needs to step in and help. Bethany Harriman, National EMTV News, Lay.
An in-house issue for police in Payam Barracks, Enga, has left hundreds of families in Pogera homeless after properties were burnt down. Police torched over 50 homes next to the Payam police station. A source who wanted to remain anonymous told EMTV News the villagers were held at gunpoint as police set properties on fire, including gardens and livestock. The incident took place after a reserve police exchanged fists with a senior regular police officer last weekend. The villagers have called on the police hierarchy, including the Enga Provincial Police Commander, Pagera District Administrator and law and order officials to address the issue. Public Enterprise and State Investment Minister Ben Micah says the PNG Power state of emergency is far from reaching its ultimate goal. However, he says the SOE is receiving positive outcomes despite criticism of ongoing power outage in the country. The minister expressed this in a recent visit to Madang.
Since declaring a state of emergency for the government's business arm PNG Power Limited, State Enterprise Minister Ben Micah says the concept is seeing progress. He told business houses and Madang's PNG Power staff that the SOE attempts to settle problems both internal and external surrounding the supply of electricity in the country.
Although I may negatively affecting cash flow of the company for the last 2 years, I believe that going forward, you may by understanding good at my level how we can structure the costing of electricity that we charge to the consumers and establish a reasonable tariff structure.
Minister Micah also visited the Madang grid with much emphasis on skilling PPL's workforce. He says that decentralizing of power management to centers is a better start as a regulator to support the company's operation. Madang's PNG Power Asset Manager Bastin Joseph says the SOE is a challenge of management of scarce resource and utilizing of local employees.
We play holy money and blow the decision or spending blow one amount we play like buying parts and by inafim long like blow we play no like inafim like blow nothing blow customer blow long yellow.
Meanwhile, Minister Micah announced that the state of emergency has been extended to 22nd of February with possibility of another month extension.
I intend to extend it for another month only, and then by then I will take to Cabinet the decisions that Cabinet will have to make on the way forward for this company.
He concluded that the implementation of the SOA poses vast challenge and called on all stakeholders for their input. Jack Lepave Jr., National EMTV News.
While most provincial towns are gearing up for the 40th independence celebrations, it would not be the same for the people in Popondetta. Northern Governor Gary Jufa said there is really nothing to celebrate because a huge bulk of northern people are still missing out on basic government services. He said the province is yet to get its provincial and district support improvement program funds.
You know, we're a low-performing economic province. We don't get the money that we ask for. We just have promises and they're telling us this and that, you know, all the great things that we want to hear. Nothing's happening. So what's there to celebrate? You tell.
And now we check out the finance news. The Kina closed unchanged at $0.3815 US in the interbank market. At Bank South Pacific, your Kina was fetching $0.374 US, 0.4843 Australian dollars, 0.3268 euro, and 43.45 Japanese yen. Looking at commodity prices at New York close, gold, coffee, cocoa, and copper all closed the day higher. Palm oil, copper closed higher, while crude oil closed the day lower. And finally, on the stock market, the Dow Jones closed at 7 points higher, the ASX closed at 11 points higher, and the All Ordinaries closed at 1 point higher. Support for the West Papua cause heightens and stories making headlines overseas. That's coming up after the break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to National EMTV News. The campaign for the freedom of West Papua in PNG is as old as the struggle itself. This issue affecting one of our closest neighbours has gained worldwide recognition. The geographical location of this group of people poses unique challenges to PNG and its developments.
An issue of significance surrounding this struggle is along the border we share with Indonesia. Papua New Guinean advocates of this issue say as a nation, we need to recognize the implications this struggle poses.
Our people at the border are not secure. The West Sipiks, the Engans, the Western Province people, you know, the Southern Highlanders living along the border, they are not safe.
On the political front, there is recognition of this issue from some members of the parliament. Gary Jufa, who is now the governor of Oro, was once at the helm of customs in PNG.
Across the 760-kilometer border, a whole host of terrible activities are being carried out. Oppressive activities. People are being brutalized, being oppressed, being killed. Melanesians, Pacific Islanders. We can't just imagine that these things are not happening.
Regionally, the West Papuans have aspirations to become a recognized member of the Melanesian Spearhead Group. This is supported strongly by the people and government of Vanuatu.
Papua New Guineans, you need to wake up. You need to wake up and see what's happening not only here in the country but at a higher level.
Sarah Aupong, National EMTV News.
We now take a look at news making headlines overseas. At least 26 people have died after a passenger plane crashed into a river shortly after takeoff in Taiwan. Incredible footage show the aircraft spinning out of control before landing upside down.
Recorded on a vehicle dashboard camera just moments before the crash. The driver's shock clearly audible. Another car captures a terrifying vision. The passenger plane descending fast, clipping a moving taxi and flyover before crashing. These still shots show just how sharply the TransAsia Airways plane with 58 people on board was banking before it hit the water minutes after taking off from a nearby airport. Rescue teams responded quickly but found the plane almost submerged in the Keelung River just outside the capital Taipei. Children amongst those pulled from the aircraft, but help came too late for many on board. As the news broke, desperate families waited at Kinmen Airport where the plane was heading. This father was told his child was being treated, but he said not enough help was being given by the airline, whose bosses appeared together to make a public apology. They confirmed most passengers were from China, and the pilot made a mayday call shortly after takeoff.
There were 2 groups of Chinese tourists on board, and we have 22 Taiwan national passengers. Among them are 10 Kinmen residents.
The black box recorder has now been recovered. It will likely provide vital clues as to what happened. What is already known is that the aircraft missed apartment blocks by metres. This video captured the plane flying dangerously low and close to residential blocks. Hours later, the same aircraft was hauled from the river after TransAsia's second fatal accident in a matter of months. There are already calls for the airline to review its safety procedures.
The Bali 9 drug smugglers Andrew Chan and Miran Sukumaran have lost their legal bid to avoid execution. The pair will be next in line to face the firing squad.
Well, this was the last legal hope Andrew Chan and Mayuran Sukumaran had of trying to save themselves from the firing squad, and the spokesperson for the Denpasar District Court yesterday afternoon confirmed that it was not to be. They have rejected the pair's second application for a judicial review on a number of grounds. One of those is they say that no new evidence was presented in the case. The pair's lawyers had argued that the new evidence was the fact that they have been rehabilitated and changed during their 10 years inside Kerobokan jail. The court also said that under Indonesian law, they weren't entitled to a second judicial review, having already had one back in 2011. In a cruel twist of fate, though, we're learning today from reports that Indonesian ministers are trying to change that law, believe those regulations will change in 2 or 3 months so that more than one review is allowed, but that will be too late for Andrew Chan and Mayuran Sukumaran. They will be learning this news inside Kerobokan jail today and finding out that they potentially have just days to live. Their family members and friends will be visiting them again, as they have been for many weeks, no doubt trying to digest this awful news. Earlier this morning, the Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, spoke about the case.
We're not going to engage in last-minute megaphone diplomacy, but I just want to assure people that the Australian government has left no stone unturned to try to ensure that these 2 Australians on death row have their sentences commuted. We've left no stone unturned.
The Indonesian government has already said that these 2 will be among the next round of prisoners to be executed. All they are waiting for now is the date. Indonesia's government is meeting this week to finalise the plans for that round of executions. They say they've begun informing the embassies of the countries where those prisoners will come from, but the Attorney-General wouldn't say whether the Australian embassy has been informed yet. So Andrew Chan and Mayuran Sukumaran are in jail now, just awaiting this news. They know that when it happens, they will be given 3 days' notice of their execution date.
You're watching National EMTV News tonight. We've got Trukai Sports. That's coming up next. And the Pacific Games Committee unveils our ambassadors for the Games. That story and more when we come back in a moment.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome to Trukai Sports. Well, counting down the days to July, the Pacific Games Committee announced the first 4 Games ambassadors in Port Moresby. Reigniting the memories and spirits of the 1991 South Pacific Games, the country will join these athletes as they prepare to compete at home. An insight into the struggle, efforts, ambitions and opportunities that each athlete faced and championed in preparing for one of the biggest sporting events in the region.
The highlights and memories of the Games will be remembered through the eyes of athletes. The Pacific Games Committee announced the first 4 of 10 Games ambassadors for the Pacific Games. This is an opportunity for the country to embrace the depth of commitment, struggle and achievements of individual athletes and teams in their preparations to compete at a major sports event on home soil.
Awesome! It's an honor to represent the country, but to be the face of the 2015 Pacific Games on home soil is even bigger than anything I could ever dream of.
Lois Guerrero from volleyball, Ezekiel Tovia Jr. from softball, Francis Campoan, a para-athlete, and Vavine Yore, captain of the PNG Open Women's Touch Rugby team, were announced as the first 4 Games ambassadors. For some, this will be the first time they take the field and compete on home soil.
This is the second time participating in the Pacific Games. The feeling of becoming a Games ambassador, it's a great feeling. Yeah, I like it.
What do you think people back at home would think?
I think they'll be happy. They kind of see me every time, but this thing about being a Games ambassador is something like, okay, he deserves it. He has to be an ambassador for all of us. Maybe the province too.
Taking gold in the 2011 Noumea Games with hopes and preparations high, Francis Campoan, one of our para-athletes, is proud to be part of the road to the Pacific Games in July.
For us, it's important that the public and the people of Papua New Guinea start hearing about the games through the eyes of the athletes. And so to help, for us, it's to help the public to get an insight into the different sports, the 28 sports that we've played, and also to raise the profile of both the sport and the athlete, but more importantly, like I said, to listen to what the athletes have to say about their preparation to the game. Above all, they will help us promote the Pacific Games so that people can relate to it.
6 more athletes will be announced in the weeks leading up to the Games. The Games ambassadors will be part of numerous events leading up to July and be a great avenue to build self-confidence, communication skills, and prosper in their road to success. Scholar Sengi, National, EMTV Sports.
On a related topic, the Pacific Games Council is pleased with the progress of the construction of venues. President of the Games Council, Vidya Lakan, said since his visit in November last year, the Council is satisfied that PNG will be ready to host the Games in July. But while there has been significant progress, the Council is critical of areas that need urgent attention.
In November 2014, President of the Pacific Games Council, Vidya Lakan, was critical on the construction of venues and the work being done by all stakeholders. He urged the national government, Sports Minister Justin Chichenko and the Games Organising Committee to ensure everything possible would be done to ensure the successful delivery of the Games. Since then, Sports Minister Chichenko has held numerous conferences on site at each of the venues over the past 3 months, assuring the construction of venues is on track and progressing well. In their first visit to Port Moresby for 2015, Larkin and PGC Executive Director Andrew Minogue said substantial progress has been made in this integration process. The issue with the construction of venues and the Games alone being hosted in Papua New Guinea has been an ongoing concern for several years. Now in a comfortable position with the results and progress shown by both the GOC and national government, Larkin said there have been positive changes since November. He says the PGC's confidence levels continue to grow, but a substantial amount of work remains to be done to finish the venues no later than the 31st of May. Lorraine Genia, National, EMTV Sports.
Over to rugby union, and it's a new era for the PNG Pukpuk Sevens men's team. They will now be competing in the Wellington and Hong Kong Sevens thanks to sponsorship from Puma Energy Limited. Acting General Manager for Puma Energy, Hulala Tokome, said as Papua New Guinea's major fuel supplier, Puma Energy is delighted to be part of the growth of rugby sevens in PNG.
Puma Energy announced today the backing of the PNG Pukpuk's men's sevens team with a sponsorship of 500,000 kina. The acting general manager for Puma Energy PNG, Hulala Tokome, says they are pleased to support the team with the re-entry into the World Sevens Series after an absence of almost a decade.
Sponsorship of 500,000 kina, right? So Puma Energy is getting behind it's the sevens team that we're sponsoring.
Development manager for PNG RFU, Silosi Druma, said they are delighted to have Puma Energy on board, supporting the team's efforts in progressing at the international level and with the development of rugby union in the country.
This is going to go towards the men's sevens team. 2015 is a very busy year for us, considering all the programs that we have in place. You know, with Puma Energy coming at the right time, we're very privileged and honored to receive this sponsorship. So all this sponsorship will be geared towards preparing our boys, the men's sevens team, to all these events.
PNG RFU's General Manager Frank Genia said the sponsorship of Puma Energy signifies the beginning of a new era of rugby union in the country. He said the preparations for Hong Kong will require significant funding as they want to be in the best possible position to qualify for the World Rugby Sevens Series. The sponsorship is timely as the team will be playing in the upcoming Hong Kong Sevens as well as their preparations for the 2015 Pacific Games in July. Dion Kombeng, National EMTV Sports.
The PNG Rugby Football Union is confident of Billy Rapilla taking over as head coach. Rapilla replaces Ferretti Veribula, who departed suddenly. PNG RFU Development Manager Sailosi Druma said Veribula's departure has not had an effect on PNG Rugby as a whole.
You know, it's unfortunate for us. He's moved on. He had some personal issues that he needed to sort out. Unfortunately, we couldn't have him in Wellington. But we're very thankful that you know, we've got Billy and one of our board members looking after the boys for the Wellington service.
And Trukai Sports continues after the break. Stay tuned.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome back to Trukai Sports. Over to soccer, and the venues for the round 3 fixtures of the Telikom National Soccer League this Saturday have been confirmed, with one match to be played in Lae and a doubleheader in Port Moresby. After facing non-availability of the IPA grounds to host Port Moresby matches, the league has finally secured a venue for the Moresby matches.
The IPA grounds, which had been used in the 2014 season, is still a contentious issue for both the IPA management and the NSL board, still in negotiation for its use. With a doubleheader in Port Moresby, the match will be played at the Bomana Correctional Institute Service grounds outside of the city. Telikom NSL competition manager Simon Koima remains adamant that the competition will go ahead. He said currently the NSL board is in talks with both sponsors and various stakeholders to ensure that the competition runs every weekend.
The competition is for this week only, subject to further negotiations with the management and them giving us the green light. But we can't wait. I have 3 weekends in a row, away games, so we have decided to find an alternative venue. And that's the venue available to us.
When asked about the previous 2 rounds so far, Koima said he was impressed with the standard to date.
Watching Pesta beat Oro was a shock to me, but I can't comment. It's up to Oro management to pull the socks up, I guess. But Pesta did very well. And Kari, I watched the game between Lake City Dwellers. I thought Lake City Dwellers gave a good and way in sight of winning the game.
Now the first match of the doubleheader will begin at 11:30 a.m. and will feature Admiralty taking on Oro, while the afternoon match at 2 p.m. will see FC Port Moresby take on Madang. Jeremy Moggy, National EMTV Sports.
And that report wraps up our Trukai Sports segment tonight. I'll be back with the weather details after these short messages.
Trukai Sports. Trukai Sports.
This weather information is brought to you by Tablebirds.
A quick look at the weather forecast for tonight and tomorrow in southern region, the nation's capital, to look forward to showers, then morning fog inland. In Momase and Lae City, showers and rain, squally showers then rain expected in all centres. In the Niugini Islands, all centres to look forward to showers then rain. And in the Highlands region, all centres to expect rain periods then morning fog. Now before we go, quickly recapping our top stories again tonight. It's official, Media Niugini Limited is now 100% PNG owned under Telikom. Also, Telikom broadens coverage with the rollout of 500 new towers, and the Prime Minister says 2015 is the year that defines us as a country or PNG. Well, that's been National EMTV News tonight. I'm Tokana Hasavi. As always, thank you for your company. You take care and stay safe. Good night.